people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. Reigning unified minimum weight champion, one of two minimum weight champions, Valle addressed Estrada saying, "Call me anytime. I have these two titles and I'm coming for all the belts." Both champions were in action this past weekend in separate respective bouts. "They all know I will fight anyone," Valle said after posting her 14th consecutive win. "Call me anytime. I have these two titles and I'm coming for all the belts. I don't wish to doubt the courage of Valle's convictions. We'll see if a fight materializes, if that happens."
I hope it does.
My previous video, I talked about why I favor Estrada to beat Valle. I just think she's better than in every department. That doesn't necessarily mean that Valle isn't a good fighter. She's a good fighter, a very good fighter, one of the best. But Estrada,
she's that rare fighter, that rare talent.
She's got it all. I wonder if this fight will actually materialize due to political boundary lines between the two fighters, the two champions. And you know what? We'll see if it happens. We'll see if it doesn't. Though if it doesn't,
if by some chance this fight don't take place, the saving grace for Sinicia is that she can always move up to light flyweight.
Estrada and Valle have circled each other for the past 2 years. Their rivalry has intensified, mostly through social media, but with hopes of quickly making its way to the ring. Let's go get the unification and those other two belts, vowed Valle. The titles stayed here tonight, and I'm bringing the other two back to Costa Rica.
We'll see.
If by some chance this fight don't go down, disappointing as that might be for Sinicia, who has aspirations of becoming a 3-time undisputed champion, starting at minimum weight. Disappointing as that might be, the silver lining for Sinicia is that the title's upstairs.
Up there at light flyweight.
There are only two champions at light flyweight. One is Argentina's own unified champion, Evelyn Bermudez of the Fighting Bermudez sisters, and the other is Mexico's own Jessica Neri Plata. She doesn't have to go through an entire gauntlet of fighters to unify that division. She only has to go through two.
And they're good fighters, don't misunderstand me. They're very good fighters. They're good champions, Evelyn Bermudez and Jessica Neri Plata.
They both beat unbeaten fighters in their last outings, in their last fights. Jessica beat unbeaten Kim Clavel, unbeaten champion Kim Clavel. And Evelyn,
she beat unbeaten Tania Enriquez, the younger sister of Mexico's own Kenya Enriquez, the Fighting Enriquez sisters.
For what were the newly vacated IBF and WBO titles to become a 2-time light flyweight champion. Evelyn Bermudez is a formidable fighter, and if things don't work out between Sinicia and Yocasta, she can always move up and unify that division.
I like Sinicia Estrada's chances against Evelyn Bermudez. I mean, Yocasta Valle.
2 fights ago, she was up there at light flyweight. She beat Evelyn Bermudez for her 2 alphabet titles. She eventually moved back down and vacated them, and Evelyn Bermudez, she went ahead and picked them back up.
Was in the Tania Enriquez fight.
Her last fight. If Yocasta Valle can win a points decision against Evelyn Bermudez, Yocasta Valle, who's not very big for the weight, she's somewhat smaller than Sinicia, not as big a puncher and not as nuanced. If Yocasta Valle can win a points decision going the distance with Evelyn Bermudez, I think Sinicia Estrada at minimum can do the same.
I like her chances.
I like Sinicia's chances against Evelyn Bermudez, who's durable and tough, but limited. I like Sinicia's chances against Jessica Neri Plata. I will say that I think she'd get a little bit more pushback, a little bit more resistance from Jessica than she would from Evelyn.
She can win.
I think she can. Lest we forget that Sinicia Estrada is no stranger to the women's light flyweight division. She's fought here before. She beat Tenkai Tsunami there for what was the WBO title. Tenkai Tsunami, an experienced volume puncher who can punch.
Sinicia held the WBO title there after beating Tenkai Tsunami, albeit very briefly.
She's not a stranger to this division. She's not a stranger to this weight. And the virtue of the women's light flyweight division is that the situation is somewhat less political. Jessica Neri Plata Evelyn Bermudez. They're not with any major promotional outfits in this part of the world, and Top Rank could easily offer the both of those champions career-high purses to come box Stanionis Estrada if things don't work out at minimum weight.
If things don't work out with Valle.
It won't slow Stanionis Estrada's momentum and her trajectory towards the pinnacle and the forefront of the sport. She's coming off a dominant showing over Tiny Tina Ruprecht of Germany, unbeaten Tiny Tina Ruprecht, who had never been dominated.
She had never been beaten, let alone dominated before, but Stanionis, she can make you look bad. Super bad. That must be why they call her that. In a nutshell, I'm not sure if the Valle fight is going to happen. We'll see, though if it doesn't, the silver lining is there are alternatives.
Quite a few. In men's welterweight news, I'm sure most of you have heard by now that Ortiz versus Stanionis is off. Virgil Ortiz falls ill. WBA title fight versus Stanionis has been postponed once again. I believe this is the second postponement. Initially, Stanionis fell ill, and now
it's Virgil.
BoxerScene.com has learned that the Stanionis versus Virgil Ortiz WBA welterweight title fight was postponed for the second time. Ortiz was forced to shut down training camp after suffering an undisclosed illness. The development forced the unbeaten contender to withdraw from a scheduled April 29th fight date with Stanionis at College Park Center at the University of Texas at Arlington campus.
Word around the campfire is that rhabdomyolysis that sidelined Virgil some time ago, it's sidelined him again.
The development was learned earlier in the week and ultimately confirmed by event handlers on Tuesday. It comes nearly 3 months after the attractive matchup was pushed off the originally scheduled March 18th date when Stanionis was hospitalized and forced to undergo an appendectomy.
This was one of two fights I was looking forward to on April 29th. You have to remember what was supposed to be the undisputed heavyweight title fight between Usyk and Fury. That was supposed to go down the 29th, and so was this.
The last time it was Stanionis that fell ill. This time it's Ortiz, who must walk away from what would have been his latest hometown headliner. The unbeaten contender from nearby Grand Prairie was due to fight in the greater Dallas area for the 4th straight time and 5th in his past 7 fights. Instead, the 25-year-old knockout artist who has to withdraw from a scheduled fight date for the second time in just more than a year.
He was pulled from the main event of a DAZN show last March 19th when he was hospitalized for rhabdomyolysis just ahead of fight week for a battle with England's Michael McKinson at the USC Galen Center in Los Angeles.
The bout was rescheduled for August 13th and moved to Dickies Arena in Fort Worth, where Ortiz scored a 9th-round knockout.
Not a good look for Golden Boy Promotions.
Not when you think about it. The cancellation of Zurdo Ramirez versus Gabriel Rosado, not that that was a good fight or as good a fight as this fight, it wasn't.
But it is their job to deliver content to their broadcast partner, DAZN.
They're not necessarily doing that with Ryan Garcia's next fight, it being that Showtime and the PBC seem to be at the helm of promotion for that show. The cancellation of Zurdo's last fight, the cancellation of this fight.
The political situation at lightweight that keeps William Zepeda, unbeaten up-and-comer William Zepeda, who's very talented.
Can't say that Golden Boy's ramping up to put him in a big fight because all the big fights involve fighters that are with other promotional outfits, boxing on other platforms.
Seems like for one reason or another, Golden Boy Promotions needs to get their house in order.
Still no word on what's going on between Terence Crawford and Alexis Rocha, one of their other welterweights.
He's Terence Crawford's mandatory challenger.
And that fight has not yet been made official. That fight has not yet been announced. When it comes to Ortiz, Virgil Ortiz, he lobbied for his mandatory title status to be enforced last September by way of the WBA. The WBA offered a guarantee that negotiations would begin if Stanionis did not secure a voluntary title defense by November 16th. To his credit, Stanionis was eager to bump with Ortiz once it became clear that he would not get a fight before year's end.
Stanionis' career is helmed by Richard Schaefer.
Richard Schaefer, who used to be the president of the now defunct Pro Bellum, Richard Schaefer has since found other things to do.
We'll talk about that in another video.
Their respective teams were unable to reach a deal in time to avoid a December 12th purse bid hearing, which was won by Golden Boy Promotions for $2.3 million, outpacing TGB Promotions' Tom Brown.
Tom bid 2.1.
Golden Boy bid 2.3 to secure the rights to the eagerly awaited welterweight clash.
And you know, that's the ray of hope. Given the amount of money that Stanionis stands to make from this fight, I don't think he'll easily walk away from it.
Because he is the title holder, secondary title holder. He is entitled to the lion's share of the pot.
There's still a chance the fight goes down. There's still a chance it happens.
That condition he's got, rhabdomyolysis, has once again reared its ugly head, and it just so happens Fight to Be Fit Inc., the nutritionist to both Regis Prograis, Errol Spence Jr., and some others,
Howling.
He said if Virgil Ortiz is out again due to rhabdomyolysis, he needs to hire a nutritionist and a strength and conditioning coach. This shit shouldn't be happening at this level.
It shouldn't.
He's very likely overtrained and underfueled. He needs to train smarter, not harder. Time to make an addition to the team.
That is, if he insists on campaigning as a welterweight moving forward, if he doesn't want to abandon ship.
Historically, the welterweight division might be one of the glamour weights in a historical sense of the word, but these days there's nothing glamorous about it. The entire division, I mean the whole thing, top to bottom, it's a dud.
The only division worse than welterweight is middleweight.
This was the only welterweight contest on schedule. The only one that I was actually excited about. Other than this, there are no big fights, no big welterweight contests on schedule.
And now it's postponed.
Nobody, and I mean nobody, with a pony in that welterweight show, that welterweight scene, is delivering for the boxing fans. Not Al Heyman, who not that long ago had a welterweight stronghold, not Golden Boy Promotions, not Nobody.
Fight to Be Fit Inc. saying, I think he should abandon ship at 147 pounds and kickstart his campaign at 154. He's outgrowing the weight, and boiling down to 147 is wearing him out. He's a big welter, will likely top out at 160 pounds.
Fight to Be Fit Inc. is a bit more optimistic than I am. He said, honestly, bro, I think he can stay at 147 comfortably, but he needs to invest in professional help. Remember 2 years ago, everyone said Regis Prograis outgrew 140. And when he hired me, he's now making 140 easier than ever. Golden Boy should invest into a nutritionist for him every camp.
He's very close to fighting for a title, albeit a secondary title, and that secondary title could be used as a segue to see himself become a full champion.
With a full title.
If they reschedule the Stanionis fight and Virgil Ortiz wins it.
That's what I'm talking about. If they don't decide to abandon ship at welterweight, if they don't decide to move up to junior middle, they want to stay at 147.
He might very well need a nutritionist.
He can go up to 154 because it's an easier weight to make, but big fights won't be easier to make at 154. Al Heyman has a stronghold up there.
Jim Melchalo's got all the belts.
And there are already several mandatory challengers in the queue. Virgil is actually a lot closer to fighting for a title here and now at 147 than he would be at 154.
If they don't want to abandon all the progress that he's made already, all the progress that he's made so far, investing in a nutritionist might be the way to go.
It's unfortunate to see how stop and start Virgil's career has become. He really is one of the more talented guys at or around this weight, but
something's got to change.
Men's heavyweight news. Former WBC champion Deontay Wilder defends his low pay-per-view numbers.
Deontay Wilder was last in action late last year opposite the ring Robert Helenius, who he knocked out in the first round, but
seems like a lot of people just weren't interested enough to see his ring return, see him return to the winner's bracket. Deontay was recently quoted as saying, "We can't do numbers if everybody is pirating the pay-per-views or streaming them. That's why the numbers are so down and are going to stay down, because everybody is stealing them. Fighters work very hard and risk their lives for others' entertainment. So let's get some respect. Let's watch these fights and pay for these pay-per-views. If you can't pay for it alone, then double up. Let's team up with our money and come together."
I was actually surprised at how low his numbers were. I expected more. I expected at least, 250, maybe 300,000.
Not because the fight was a titillating fight or a hot ticket, but because people are sentimental, and this would have been Wilder's first fight since suffering back-to-back losses to Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury, who he very recently reunited with.
I seen at the Jake Paul versus Tommy Fury fight in the Far East.
He was quoted as saying, "I can't stand that motherfucker. They know what's up. He's a cheater." But Saudi Arabia is a peaceful ground. There's a time and a place.
We still don't know who this guy's fighting.
Is it going to be Andy Ruiz? Is it going to be a crossover fight with Francis Ngannou? We just don't know. What we do know is that box office fights aren't selling as much as they used to. And it just so happens that the market is more inundated with box office fights now than it was in any era before it. Before this,
there were never this many pay-per-views.
You know what it is? The networks don't want to shell out the kind of big guarantees that the fighters want, so what they do is they put them on pay-per-view.
even if the fight ain't pay-per-view worthy.
Take this past weekend's fight between David Benavidez and Caleb Plant. That wasn't a full title fight, you understand. That wasn't necessarily a championship boxing match. That was for an interim title.
What's going on now is, you ask some of these guys to fight a halfway decent fighter, and they think they're supposed to get the moon and the stars in order to do it.
The networks themselves aren't going to break the bank, break the budget, trying to finance these large guarantees.
But the fighters and their managers and their teams, they want what they want.
They want an arm and a leg every time they're asked to fight a halfway decent fighter, even if what they want is not an adequate reflection, accurate reflection of their actual marquee value.
And if they don't get the kind of guarantees that they want, they don't fight.
Benavidez versus Plant was a decent fight. It's not that it wasn't, but so was Mabili versus Gongora. And Mabili versus Gongora didn't cost $75.
Neither does Inouye versus Fulton, which has been rescheduled for the summer months.
A battle of the unbeatens. The best super bantamweight. The best from the West versus the beast from the East. The monster.
Don't cost $75 like Benavidez versus Plant did, so what you have to ask yourself is, why are they charging the fans that much for that fight when we're getting better fights for no additional charge?
That's what I told you. These fighters and their teams want an arm and a leg every time they have to fight a halfway decent fighter. The only way to get them out there, only way to get them to do it, is to put them on pay-per-view, because the network ain't going to break the bank.
They're not going to break the budget to finance your ego.
Showtime being the most glaring example, Showtime's annual budget for boxing ain't what it used to be. There's not as much money to play, not as much money to pay these fighters to get out there.
So they supplement the effort by billing several fights as box office fights, pay-per-views. That's what it is.
Between an oversaturated market with one too many box office fights that actually aren't box office worthy, and piracy being at an all-time high, it creates a situation to where
the numbers are low, and they're gonna stay low.
For Deontay Wilder in particular, it's been a sharp decline. You're talking about a guy who went out there with Tyson Fury in their rematch and sold approximately 800 to 850,000 pay-per-views.
600,000 with the trilogy, 600,000 with the third fight.
It's a steep fall. From 600,000 2 fights ago to just 75,000?
That's 8 times less than what he sold in the third Fury fight. 8 times.
It's indicative that Deontay Wilder's stock, his marquee value as a result of those 2 consecutive losses to Tyson Fury, it took a hit, a critical hit, a big hit, and in spite of the vocal minority that you might find on social media,
the majority of fight fans are not buying his fights.
At least not the last one. Could he do better opposite the ring, Andy Ruiz? Better than Robert Helenius? Better than those numbers? I think so, but how much better?
Enough to cover the operational costs and enough to cover the guarantees, enough to pay the fighters the way they want to get paid?
Can they sell enough pay-per-view buys to do that? We're several months into the year of 2023, and Deontay Wilder's next fight still has not yet been announced.
Still in the air.
I vaguely recall a few weeks ago a blurb report that, the people at the PBC were unable to satisfy both fighters' financial demands.
So who can?
It's a legitimate question. It looks like Deontay Wilder won't be getting back out there until early summer.
A little over 2 months.
And we'll see what gets announced between now and then.